Karen stood on the Hendersons' porch for a full minute before knocking. When Sarah opened the door, her expression immediately hardened. "Karen, if you're here to deliver another violation notice." "I'm here to resign," Karen said quickly, "from the HOA board, and to apologize." Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Resign? Can I come in, please?" Reluctantly, Sarah stepped aside. In the living room, Mike looked up from helping Emma with a coloring book, his face instantly suspicious. "I've been thinking about what you said," Karen began, her voice shaking slightly. "About the last time I was happy." "I couldn't answer because I honestly don't remember." She sat down across from them, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. 3 years ago, when Richard left, he said I cared more about what the neighbors thought than about him. I told him he was wrong, but he wasn't." Emma looked up from her coloring. "Are you sad?" she asked innocently. The simple question nearly broke Karen. "Yes, sweetie. I've been sad for a long time." "I know your husband left," Sarah said quietly, "but that doesn't excuse what you've done to us." "No, it doesn't," Karen agreed. "Nothing excuses it. I turned into someone I don't recognize. I made rules more important than people, and I hurt your family in the process." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is my resignation letter. I'm stepping down from the HOA board effective immediately. Bob Martinez will take over as president." Mike examined the letter, then looked at her suspiciously. "What's the catch?" "No catch. I'm also withdrawing all complaints against you with the city. Your pool repair can proceed immediately." Karen's voice grew stronger. "And I'm going to personally apologize to every family I've wronged over the past 3 years." "That's a lot of families," Sarah said dryly. "I know." Karen managed a small smile. "Mrs. Chen made me realize that I've been using HOA enforcement as a substitute for human connection. Every time I knocked on someone's door with a complaint, it was an excuse to interact with my neighbors, even if they hated me for it." Emma had stopped coloring and was watching the adults with wide eyes. "My mommy says sometimes people are mean because they're hurting inside." Karen looked at the little girl, remembering her own daughter who lived across the country and rarely called. "Your mommy is very wise." "So what happens now?" Mike asked. Karen stood up. "Now I figure out how to be a better neighbor and a better person." She paused at the door. "I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. You have a beautiful family, and I'm sorry I made things harder for you." As she walked home, Karen felt something she hadn't experienced in years: relief. Her phone was buzzing with messages from other board members about her resignation, but she ignored them. For the first time in 3 years, the HOA wasn't her problem. The next morning, Karen woke up and looked out her window at the Henderson house. The pool repair truck was already there, and she could hear the sound of work beginning. It was a good sound, the sound of things getting fixed instead of staying broken. She made coffee and sat down at her kitchen table with a notebook. At the top of the page, she wrote, "People I need to apologize to." The list was longer than she'd expected, but she had time now. All the time she'd spent documenting violations and writing complaint letters could now be spent on something more meaningful. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her daughter's name. "Hi, Mom. I saw the news story online. Are you okay?" For the first time in months, Karen smiled. "I'm getting there, sweetheart. I'm finally getting there." Outside, she could hear children playing in the Hendersons' backyard, and for once, the sound didn't make her think about noise ordinances or property values. It just sounded like happiness. But as she hung up the phone, Karen noticed a moving truck 2 streets over. New neighbors meant new opportunities, either to repeat old patterns or to build something better. The choice, she realized, was entirely hers. And somewhere in the distance, she could swear she heard the sound of another pool being drained. Karen sat in her immaculate living room, watching herself on the evening news. The reporter had painted her as a petty tyrant, complete with dramatic shots of the Hendersons' dangerous pool toys and testimonials from neighbors about her overzealous enforcement. The HOA president has refused to comment. Jennifer Martinez said directly into the camera, "But sources tell us this isn't the first time Karen Whitmore has targeted families in Willowbrook Estates." Karen's phone buzzed with a text from her sister in Phoenix. Saw the news. What the hell, Karen? Then another from her ex-husband. Emma looks like she's about Emma's age. This isn't you. But it was her, wasn't it? She'd spent 3 years building a reputation as the neighborhood's enforcer, taking pride in her attention to detail, her unwavering commitment to the rules. When had that commitment become cruelty? A knock at her door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She opened it to find Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor, holding a casserole dish. "May I come in?" Mrs. Chen asked gently. In the kitchen, Mrs. Chen set down the dish and fixed Karen with a steady gaze. "I've been watching you for 3 years. You're not a bad person, but you're a lonely one." "I'm not lonely," Karen protested automatically. "When was the last time someone invited you to dinner? When did you last laugh with a friend?" Mrs. Chen's voice was kind but firm. "You've made yourself into the neighborhood police because it gives you a reason to interact with people, even if they don't like you for it." Karen felt tears threatening. "I just wanted everything to be perfect." "Perfect for who? You live in a beautiful house, but you're miserable. The Hendersons live in a house with a broken pool, but they're happy." Mrs. Chen reached across the table and took Karen's hand. "Happiness isn't about perfect pools, dear. It's about perfect moments with imperfect people." After Mrs. Chen left, Karen sat alone with her thoughts. She pulled out her laptop and began scrolling through the HOA files, looking at 3 years of complaints, violations, and enforcement actions. Almost all of them had her name on them. The Martinez family, cited for parking their work truck on the street during a family medical emergency. The Johnsons, fined for letting their grass grow too high while their father was in the hospital. The Patels, reported for having too many cars in their driveway during their daughter's graduation party. Every single incident had a human story behind it, and she'd ignored all of them in favor of rigid rule enforcement. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed City Hall. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Code Enforcement Officer Janet Walsh. I need to discuss the Henderson complaint you filed." "Yes?" Karen's voice was barely a whisper. "I've been out to inspect the property. The pool is being properly maintained during repairs, and there are no code violations. However, I am concerned about the pattern of complaints coming from your address. In the past 6 months, you've filed 14 complaints against various properties, and none of them have resulted in actual violations." Karen's stomach dropped. "I was just trying to... I understand you're the HOA president, but using city resources to harass your neighbors is a serious matter. I'm going to need you to come in for a meeting next week to discuss this pattern." After hanging up, Karen walked to her window and looked out at the Henderson house. The news van was gone, but she could see Emma playing in the front yard while her parents worked in the garden. They looked normal, happy, everything she'd supposedly been trying to protect. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. It was time to face the music, but first, she needed to face the Hendersons. She owed them more than an apology. She owed them the truth about why she'd made their lives so difficult. As she walked across the street, Karen realized she was more terrified of this conversation than she'd ever been of anything in her life. But for the first time in years, she was also doing something that felt right. The next morning, Karen stood at her kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching the Henderson house with the intensity of a hawk. No repair truck in sight, no signs of pool filling activity. She was already composing her follow-up violation notice when her doorbell rang. "Mrs. Whitmore?" The young man at her door wore khaki pants and a polo shirt with sunset pools embroidered on the chest. "I'm here about the Henderson pool repair, but there's a problem." Karen's pulse quickened. "What kind of problem?" "Well, I tried to start the repair yesterday, but someone filed a complaint with the city. Now there's a stop work order until an inspector comes out. Mrs. Henderson said you might know something about it." Karen's cheeks flushed. I filed a legitimate complaint about code violations." "Right, but now they can't fix the pool until the city says it's okay to proceed. Could be weeks." He scratched his head. "Honestly, I've never seen anything like this. Usually, people want pools fixed, not kept broken." As the repairman left, Karen felt a pang of something she couldn't quite identify. She'd wanted compliance, not indefinite delays. But before she could process this feeling, her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen. Saw the news truck at the Hendersons. What's going on? News truck. Karen rushed to her front window. Sure enough, a Channel 7 news van was parked outside the Henderson house, and a reporter with perfectly styled hair was setting up for what looked like a live broadcast. This is Jennifer Martinez, Channel 7 News, reporting from Willowbrook Estates, where a neighborhood dispute has taken an unexpected turn, the reporter began. Karen's stomach dropped. She crept closer to her window, straining to hear. Airwallah President Karen Whitmore has filed multiple complaints against the Henderson family, preventing them from repairing their pool and potentially creating the very health hazards she claims to be concerned about. The reporter thrust her microphone towards Sarah Henderson, who looked exhausted but determined. We just want to fix our pool, Sarah said. We're trying to follow all the rules, but every time we attempt to make repairs, we get hit with new violations. It's like we're trapped in a maze with no exit. Karen's phone started buzzing incessantly. Text after text poured in from neighbors, board members, and people she barely knew. Most weren't supportive. Karen, what have you done? Came a text from Bob Martinez, the HOO treasurer. My wife says you're all over Facebook. People are calling you the pool police. Then came a knock at her door. Karen opened it to find Detective Ray Collins, a tall man with kind eyes who lived 3 streets over. Karen, I need to talk to you about the Henderson situation, he said quietly. Can I come in? In her living room, Detective Collins sat forward in his chair. I'm here as a neighbor, not as a cop. But I'm concerned about how this is escalating. The Hendersons filed a harassment complaint this morning. Harassment. Karen's voice cracked. I was enforcing HOA rules. I know, but filing multiple city complaints to prevent someone from fixing their property, that's entering gray area territory. He leaned back. Karen, I've lived here for 8 years. You're not a bad person, but this thing with the pool is making you look like the villain. Karen stared at her hands. I just wanted them to follow the rules. Sometimes the rules need to serve the people, not the other way around. Detective Collins stood. Think about what you really want here. Is it a perfect neighborhood, or is it a place where people can actually live? As he left, Karen's phone rang. The caller ID showed Channel 7 News. Karen stared at the ringing phone, her heart pounding. After 5 rings, she finally answered. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your side of the story regarding the Henderson pool situation. I don't think that's a good idea, Karen stammered. We're going live at 5 o'clock whether you participate or not, Jennifer said matter-of-factly. Your neighbors have been quite vocal about their concerns. This is your chance to explain your position. After hanging up, Karen felt the walls closing in. She needed to take control of the narrative before it spiraled completely out of hand. She grabbed her keys and marched toward the Henderson house, her HOA president badge prominently displayed on her blazer. Sarah Henderson answered the door, her face immediately hardening. Karen, what do you want now? I want to resolve this, Karen said, forcing her voice to remain steady. Perhaps we can work out a compromise. A compromise? Sarah's laugh was bitter. You've made it impossible for us to fix our pool, turned us into a media circus, and now you want to compromise. Mike appeared behind his wife, his face flushed with anger. Karen, do you have any idea what you've done? Emma's afraid to go to school because kids are asking her about the pool lady on TV. Something twisted in Karen's chest at the mention of the little girl, but she pushed it down. I'm trying to protect everyone's property values. If I let one family ignore the rules. What rules? Mike exploded. We were fixing the pool. You stopped us from fixing it. The rules about maintaining proper water levels and removing safety hazards. Karen shot back, her voice rising to match his. Mom. Emma's small voice came from behind her parents. Are we in trouble? The sight of the 6-year-old's worried face hit Karen like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. No, sweetheart, Sarah said gently, never taking her eyes off Karen. Some grown-ups just forget how to be nice to each other. I'm not trying to be mean, Karen said, her voice suddenly small. I'm trying to keep the neighborhood nice for everyone. By terrorizing a family? Mike's voice was cold. By filing false complaints to prevent us from fixing our own property. They weren't false. Karen's composure cracked. The pool is a health hazard. The toys are a liability. I have documentation. You have problems, Sarah said quietly. Real problems that have nothing to do with our pool. Karen felt something break inside her. You don't understand. I've worked so hard to keep this neighborhood perfect. My husband left because he said I cared more about appearances than people, but someone has to maintain standards. Someone has to. She stopped, horrified that she'd revealed so much. The Hendersons stared at her, their anger shifting to something that looked almost like pity. Karen, Sarah said softly, when was the last time you were happy? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Karen looked at the family standing before her, tired, stressed, but united. When had she last felt that kind of connection with anyone? I need to go, Karen whispered, backing away from the door. As she hurried home, she could hear the news van starting up behind her. In 3 hours, the whole city would be watching her story unfold. She had to figure out how to salvage the situation before it destroyed everything she'd worked for. But as she reached her perfectly manicured lawn and pristine house, Karen realized she wasn't entirely sure what she'd been working toward anymore. Karen Whitmore pressed her nose against the chain-link fence, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the metal as she surveyed the Hendersons' backyard like a general inspecting enemy territory. The pool was half empty, its blue liner exposed in ugly wrinkles, and worse yet, there were children's toys scattered across the deck. Absolutely unacceptable, she muttered, pulling out her phone to snap photos. The flash reflected off her rhinestone-studded reading glasses as she documented every violation with the precision of a crime scene investigator. 20 minutes later, she was hammering on the Hendersons' front door, her HOA violation notice clutched in her other hand like a weapon. The door opened to reveal Mike Henderson, still in his work clothes, looking exhausted. Karen, what can I do for you? He asked, though his tone suggested he'd rather do nothing at all. She thrust the notice at him. Section 4.7 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that pools must be maintained at proper water levels. Yours is a disgrace to the entire neighborhood. Mike glanced at the paper, then back at her. Karen, we just had it drained for repairs. The liner company is coming tomorrow too. I don't care about your excuses. Karen's voice pitched higher. The rules are the rules. You have 24 hours to fill that pool or face a $500 fine. $500? Mike's wife, Sarah, appeared behind him, their 6-year-old daughter Emma peeking around her legs. That's insane. We can't fill it until the repairs are done. Karen's eyes narrowed as she spotted Emma. And another thing, those toys are a safety hazard. What if someone climbs over the fence and gets hurt? The HOA could be liable. It's our own backyard, Sarah said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Not according to the covenant, Karen replied smugly. Everything visible from neighboring properties falls under aesthetic guidelines. I've already filed a complaint with the city about the pool, and I suggest you take this seriously. As she turned to leave, Karen felt a surge of satisfaction. Finally, someone was going to learn that rules mattered. She'd been HOA president for 3 years, and maintaining property values was her sacred duty. The Hendersons had been pushing boundaries ever since they moved in, parking their work truck on the street, letting their grass grow a half-inch too long, and now this pool disaster. Back at her own pristine house, Karen pulled up the city's code enforcement website. If the Hendersons wanted to play hardball, she'd show them what real consequences looked like. She filled out a formal complaint, checking every box that might apply. Public health hazard, property maintenance violation, potential breeding ground for mosquitoes. Her finger hovered over the submit button. Was she being too harsh? She shook her head. No, this was exactly the kind of thinking that had led to declining property values in other neighborhoods. Someone had to draw the line. She clicked submit, then picked up her phone to call her fellow board members. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Karen Whitmore meant business. The Hendersons would comply, or they'd learn what real trouble looked like.